Hello again. It's another beautiful day and I've got my coffee. Let's watch some stuff.
Breaking news, this video of Joe Rogan talking about 9/11 is going viral and causing controversy. Check this out.
The day before 9/11, the day before the attacks, Rumsfeld gave a press conference where he talked about trillions of dollars missing. Then a plane slams into the very part of the building where they were doing the accounting.
According to some estimates, we cannot track $2.3 trillion in transactions.
They said they couldn't track $2.3 trillion. No, that didn't happen. That did not happen, but it did happen.
Now there's pretty much two groups responding to this video. One group dismissing Joe Rogan and the other group completely agreeing with him. The group dismissing Joe Rogan here is pretty much just saying this was all just one big coincidence. And these elites wouldn't do something as insane as, put a plane in a building. They're pretty much just saying Joe Rogan is just trying to find something that isn't there. But the group that is agreeing with Joe here is pretty much saying that this whole thing is shady. Because $2.7 trillion is a lot of money. And a lot of elitists didn't want that money to be accounted for by any means necessary. So let me know your thoughts down below. Do you think it was just a coincidence? Let me know down below. Don't forget to like this video, share it everywhere, hit that follow button. Until next time, love, peace, and taco grease. Makes you think, doesn't it?
Today's video was suggested by my sister-in-law Terry, and it will be on 9/11. There's lots of conspiracy theories surrounding 9/11, and I don't necessarily believe that this was an inside job, but a lot of them definitely do, you do want to raise an eyebrow at them, right? So please have an open mind and know that I'm not trying to make the events of that day any less tragic than they were, because they absolutely were unspeakable. And it was terrible that we had to lose so many people unnecessarily. As far as this particular video is concerned, I never heard this before. $2.3 trillion just missing. I saw other videos of him actually making that statement of the $2.3 trillion, but I don't know that it ever became accounted for, or if it just went poof and then it's gone. I don't know. But if you know about, if we ever accounted for that money, please, I'd like to know. Excuse me a moment while I just pop in here, and thank you so much for joining me for today's coffee talk. If you're having a good time, maybe you'd consider hitting that subscribe button and come back tomorrow, because I'm making a new video every day.
If you go on TV tonight and say, I think the earth is flat, people will just laugh at you. They don't care if you think the earth is flat. It's not a threat to anyone. But if you say, like, what actually happened with Building 7? Like, that is weird, right? It doesn't, like, what is that?
Right.
If you were to say something like that on television, they'd flip out. They would flip out. You'd, like, lose your job over that. Why? It's my country.
Right.
Is it an attack on my country? Can I ask you, like, I don't really understand. Do buildings actually collapse? No, maybe they do. I don't know. But, like, why can't I ask questions about that? Anything you're not allowed to ask questions about is something you should be asking more questions about, as far as I'm concerned.
That is interesting, isn't it? It's like they're trying to conceal something. But in this situation, I understand it being taboo to ask questions about our government potentially planning this particular event because of how many people were lost on that day. It's just unacceptable. It's rude and it's inconsiderate. No, it's insensitive because of the loss of people. And it's not okay to assume that our government would allow all of these people to pass away. Not openly, but I mean, we do it anyways.
That the government had anything to do with the attack of 9/11? Do you believe in a conspiracy in terms of the attack of 9/11?
No, but I do believe that it is the first time in history that fire has ever melted steel. I do believe that it defies physics for the World Trade Center Tower 7, Building 7, which collapsed in on itself. It is impossible for a building to fall the way it fell without explosives being involved. World Trade Center 7. World Trader 1 and 2 got hit by planes. 7, miraculously, the first time in history, steel was melted by fire. It is physically impossible.
And who do you think is responsible for that?
I have no idea. But to say that we don't know that it imploded and it was an implosion and a demolition is beyond ignorant. Look at the films, get a physics expert here from Yale, from Harvard, pick the school. It defies reason.
Let's get one. Let's get one, because that
I would do it.
is the unthinkable.
It is the unthinkable. But imagine if somebody could convince you of that, could prove it to you, Elizabeth. Just 7.
That's good shit. Then we went back there. Whoa, 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 whoa.
Full disclosure, I had no clue about this. I knew about, another building, that building 7 falling down, but I had no idea about the secrecy surrounding it or the conspiracy theories surrounding it. How people think that the government actually had those planes fly into the World Trade Center as a mask to bring down Building 7, or they used that situation as an opportunity to bring down Building 7. For why, I don't even pretend to know. I'm just learning about this today. Thanks, Terry. That is absolutely insane. I guess the building fell in a manner that made it look like it was demoed. And the way the beams were distorted, I'm assuming based on what she just said, it looks like a demolition. And that's crazy to me. That's absolutely, I had no idea. I had no idea. All right, so the more you know, I guess, right?
Listen, in this video, I am not telling you what to believe or drawing any conclusions about what happened on September 11th, 2001. So TikTok, you can't take me down for spreading misinformation. Everything I'm about to say is strictly factual. Here we go. So everybody knows that on September 11th, 2001, the World Trade Center buildings 1 and 2 were hit by commercial airlines that had been hijacked and eventually collapsed. However, it's less well known that World Trade Center Building 7, which was not hit by a plane, also collapsed later that day.
That's good shit. Then we went back there. Whoa, 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 whoa.
A report on what happened was carried out by the National Institute of Standards and Technology, also known as NIST. Their conclusion was that falling debris from Tower 1 had started office fires on the first few floors of Tower 7. And they say that these fires got so hot that they caused thermal expansion in some of the structural beams. This in turn caused the entire building to have what they call a progressive collapse. And if that's correct, this would be the first progressive collapse primarily caused by fire ever in human history. Also, the investigation was made more difficult because immediately after the collapse, government contracted companies began hauling off all the rubble. This was actually illegal because they were tampering with a crime scene before an investigation could be carried out, but that's what happened. Now, many keen observers in the engineering community weren't satisfied with the NIST reports. Some were saying that the studies weren't very rigorous and that NIST had jumped to conclusions. There were some private engineering firms who confirmed the NIST reports, but skeptics said that these companies were contracted by the government and therefore couldn't be fully trusted. Enter Leroy Hulsey, a professor of structural engineering at the University of Alaska Fairbanks, who was contracted to conduct his own study of what happened at Tower 7. Hulsey's study, which you can now find online, took his team over 4 years to complete and cost them over $300,000. Essentially what they did was reconstruct Tower 7 in 2 different kinds of modeling software and then simulate the different events that could have led to a collapse. And here's what they found. The principal conclusion of our study is that fire did not cause the collapse of World Trade Center Tower 7 on 9/11, contrary to the conclusions of NIST and private engineering firms that studied the collapse. The second conclusion of our study is that the collapse of Tower 7 was a global failure involving the near simultaneous failure of every column in the building. So that was their conclusion, that the only way for the tower to collapse the way it did in the video would be for all of the interior and exterior beams to be taken out almost simultaneously. The simulation showed that a progressive collapse due to fire would not have caused the building to collapse in on itself, but would have tipped it over like this. So they believe that the NIST report and the simulations that they carried out were in fact incorrect. Halsey's study also took into account evidence that was largely ignored by the NIST report, such as a piece of steel preserved by engineers from the Worcester Polytechnic Institute, which was some of the only rubble and material that was saved from that day which could be used as evidence. The engineers from the Worcester Polytechnic Institute said they were shocked that the piece of metal resembled Swiss cheese. It's too bad they hauled off all that evidence, or we could probably understand things with a lot more certainty. Because there's not a lot of certainty around this issue right now. It's impossible to know exactly what happened. And again, I'm not drawing any conclusions or telling you what to believe. The only thing I'm telling you is that you might want to read Dr. Leroy Halsey's structural revaluation of the collapse of World Trade Center Tower 7. Because if this report is correct, there's a lot of implications you can draw from that.
There seem to be a lot of facts in there. And he even said at the beginning, these are facts. But that's crazy. They just went in and started hauling stuff away before they even had a chance to do the investigation. They just assumed, I guess. And they're like, oh, it's fine. You know, they fell because of that. Let's start hauling stuff away. We got to start cleaning up. Dang, man. What? So all of the beams had to fail at the same time. That sounds an awful lot like a demolition. That's just creepy. That makes you think.
These people are very famous for arranging false flag situations to gain support for initiatives that they want to do. You know, if we're being very honest, and it's a painful discussion, and unfortunately it hurts a lot of people's feelings, but if we look at 9/11, you know, 9/11, it's very hard to disprove that was a false flag operation in order to put us into a war where all these people got super wealthy and millions and millions and millions of Middle Eastern people were, okay? And you know, there's a large percentage of people that believe 9/11 was some type of an inside job, right? Or inside false flag. I'm trying to be respectful because there's people that listen to this that have loved ones that were in that situation. That might
or from the byproducts of this.
Yeah,
situation.
but really, like, those people should be the ones that are upset the most about what happened, because I do believe that was something that was orchestrated intentionally for us to gain support to go to war.
That's a rough point of view to have. That whole event was orchestrated to rally support to go to war. I understand one having that particular point of view, but it is rough, just like he said, because you don't want to be insensitive to the people who lost loved ones in that time. But you do see a lot of the things that do happen around times where the government wants us to think a certain way, like when they needed to pass funding for Ukraine just recently. I did a little blurb on this. They came out with how bad Putin is. Tucker Carlson had his interview with Putin, and it didn't go terribly. Let's just say that. Doesn't make Putin a great guy, but it didn't go terribly. But they're like, all of a sudden, oh, Putin's such a bad guy. He's got this crazy satellite, but we need to send money to Ukraine. So Putin bad, Ukraine get money. And they did that in October of last year as well. Same thing. You know, they orchestrate, not necessarily orchestrate, but they bring some media out that makes the people think one way, which makes it okay to do this thing. It's a little shady and underhanded, and it's disgusting that people passed because of it. But that is an interesting viewpoint.
Officials have begun a major investigation into whether someone or many people benefited financially from the evil done to the country last Tuesday. Not long before the attacks occurred, there were some financial transactions in the stock market that may indicate knowledge of the attack before it began. ABC's Antonio Mora is here. Whether they ever get to, if they ever get to the bottom of it, it will be astonishing.
Astonishing, no question, Peter. What many Wall Street analysts believe is that the terrorists made bets that a number of stocks would see their prices fall. They did so by buying what are called puts. If you bet right, the rewards can be huge. The risks are also huge, unless, of course, you know something bad is going to happen to the company you're betting against.
This could very well be insider trading at the worst, most horrific, most evil use you've ever seen in your entire life.
One example, United Airlines. The Thursday before the attack, more than 2,000 contracts betting that the stock would go down were purchased. 90 times more in one day than in 3 weeks. When the markets reopened, United's stock dropped. The price of the contracts soared, and someone may have made a lot of money fast.
$180,000 turns into $2.4 million when that plane hits the World Trade Center.
It's almost the same story with American Airlines.
That's a five-fold increase in the value of what was a $337,000 trade on Monday.
All of a sudden becomes what?
$1.8 million.
And there's much more, including an extraordinarily high number of bets against Morgan Stanley and Marsh & McLennan, two of the World Trade Center's biggest tenants.
Could this be a coincidence? This would be one of the most extraordinary coincidences in the history of mankind if it was a coincidence.
It is absolutely unprecedented to see cases of insider trading covering the entire world, from Japan to the United States and North America to Europe.
ABC News has now learned that the Chicago Board of Options Exchange launched their investigation into the unusual trading last week. That may have given them enough time to stop anyone from profiting from debt here in the U.S. It may also give investigators, Peter, a hot trail that might lead them to the terrorists.
Holy freaking crap. Dude, so they knew? Did they know? Did they know? That's gross. That's disgusting. So these people knew and they did like insider trading before it happened and made a whole bunch of money off of that? That's disgusting. That's disgusting. Did they ever get to the bottom of that? Does anybody know if that actually was resolved and if anybody went to jail because of that? Because that's some serious coincidence, right? That just kind of points to they knew something was going to happen. Oh man, that's a big old can of worms. Dang. Ugh, I don't like it. I don't like the way that makes me feel. That makes me feel very unpleasant. Unpleasant indeed.
You want the f***ing truth. The day before 9/11, Donald Rumsfeld held a press conference where he discussed the issue of trillions of dollars that were unaccounted for. He mentioned that there were estimates of $2.3 trillion in transactions that couldn't be tracked. Coincidentally, the next day, the Pentagon was hit by a plane precisely in the area where accounting records were kept. This resulted in a significant explosion, damaging a substantial portion of the building. Rumsfeld's statement was indeed made, asserting that they couldn't trace $2.3 trillion. Do you know what is the f***ing coincidence here? That's right. This occurred right before the 9/11 attacks. While it may seem unreal, it did take place. Think about what you saw when you saw that Vice movie where Dick Cheney becomes the vice president and gets billions of dollars in no-bid contracts. Now think about what we just saw with Donald Rumsfeld saying they couldn't find $2.3 trillion. That money could build a whole other country. So,
I know that video was a little redundant, but it did elaborate a little bit. But it did make me think how insane $2.3 trillion was at that time. It was a lot more, than it is now. I don't know what $2.3 trillion is in today's money, but I know gas was like $2 a gallon. So that's a lot. That's going to be the end of it for today. Thank you so much for hanging out with me. I really appreciate your time. Hope to see you tomorrow. Have a wonderful day. Here's my cutting room floor.
3, 2, 1.
I want to thank Terry for recommending we look into these. That's happiness in a cup. My husband got me this cup. I think it's silly as hell. I love it. Every point of view is still a valid point of, no, it's not a valid point of view. Every point of view is going to be explored. Holy freaking crap. Little bit of redundancy. They redundant and redundancy. I want to thank my sister-in-law. I'm going to call her my sister-in-law. I'm pretty sure she's my sister-in-law. She's my husband's sister's husband's sister. She's my sister-in-law. I haven't looked into it any further. Of course, I haven't looked into it any further. I don't do that. Or if it's still, poof, up in smoke. Yeah. And they think that it was set up like it was demoed, demolition, demoed. It fell down. So they just started hauling it away. They just assumed, oh, it fell because of this, and we got to start cleaning it up. But dang, man, what? When this happened, I was still young. I'm just gonna leave that one in there. We're just gonna leave it in there because I like it, and it's got more words.